Hello, my name is Jeff, and welcome
That's
to
going.
this week's live event.
Start. Ready?
Yeah.
This is confusing. I don't like why is it making me do this now? I'm going to pause the preview player there. Hopefully everything will keep on going. Welcome to this week's live event. My name is Jeff. I have a special guest, my lovely wife, Alice, here.
Hi.
Exactly. And there is a tradition in the United Kingdom of crackers. And so in order to kick this all off, can you see me okay over there, everyone? Is this coming through in the chat? Uh-oh. Oh, from Lebanon. Awesome. Am I still coming through okay? I think I'm coming through. Whovian. Oh, yeah, it's a Doctor Who fan here. Whovian.
Yeah, I knew that is a Doctor Who fan, a Whovian. Yeah.
Someone had to tell me.
Right.
I didn't get it.
Oh.
I didn't get it. Hey, Whovian. Okay, so we're going to do a Christmas cracker here. Hi, our mom. Oh, hi, thank you. And let me just say hello. Hello, Divis. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, JC's Radiant Ray, who's also saying Merry Christmas to everyone else. I'm going to get to your question in just a second. Hello, Isabella. We can see you fine. Voice and video. Great. Okay, thank you, JC's Radiant Ray. Toma M. Tanner Klein. Hello. We're going to do the cracker now. So, Merry Christmas, everybody. Woo!
Festive.
So, with crackers, you get a deck of cards. Well, you don't always get a deck of cards. You get a little toy. You can have the toy.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. My personal... Ooh, this is nice.
They're fancy crackers.
These are really fancy crackers. So we get the joke, which is, what did the snowflake say to the fallen leaf?
I have no idea.
See, usually they're puns, so I don't think this isn't... It says, you are so last season. Which is, is true.
That's a quality cracker joke. I can get behind that.
All right.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to do a charade, but we're not going to do... We never do I've never done the charades. You guys do the charades?
Sometimes. It's
Really?
shambolic.
All right.
Yeah.
And then I'm supposed to ask the person sitting next to me, and feel free to chime in, which famous person would you invite for Christmas dinner?
Which famous person would I invite for Christmas dinner? Fictional or non-fictional?
Doesn't specify.
You know what? Considering the prior remark, I would say Doctor Who. In her current incarnation, which is just about to take on.
There you go. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Is this the first female doctor?
Yeah, Christmas Day.
First female doctor to come out Christmas Day. I don't know who I would invite for Christmas dinner. We got Bill Nye. Isabella A. would invite Bill Nye. That's pretty
Nice,
good, actually. Yeah. That, of course, makes me think of Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think it would be cool to have Neil deGrasse. I bet he would be a lot of fun to have at dinner. Yay, the Who fan. And, of course, no cracker would be complete without the hat.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta have the hat. And I shall now... It barely fits on my big old melon. There we go.
Yeah, it's a good look.
So here we are. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everybody. I'm going to sign off now, but I was here for cracker purposes. It's nice to kind of meet you all. Enjoy.
Thank you, sweetie. There we go. Merry Christmas. I will wear the crown for a little while anyways, and I am getting too hot. Okay. Let's see. So, yes, thank you for joining me. Happy holidays, everyone, if you're not celebrating Christmas. This is the time that we set aside every week to answer questions on voice, not just crackers. Yeah. So, what do we got here? Okay. Oh, see you later, Tanner. I once came across one fake vocal coach that led me to practicing vocal the wrong way. One way that he said is good to practice vocal is that we should lack our ab by carrying our stomach in so our voice can come out correctly. That even led me to practicing the AAA method like that. But you've dropped that and changed it. Well, very cool. Thank you for giving it a shot. I appreciate you checking in on the AAA method. Yeah. So we'll see. Merry Christmas, everybody. Please make a Bob Omar's requesting exercises on whistle register. I could certainly do some videos that ascend into that range of your voice, but in terms of the actual technique behind it, that's not something that I am particularly adept at. It's difficult because when you do that, the epiglottis closes over the vocal fold, and that's what forms the aperture of the whistle there. And that can be rather difficult to understand what's happening beneath the epiglottis. But I'll do a bit of reading and see if I might be able to facilitate something there. Thank you, JC's Radiant Ray. Of course, she's off now, but I will relay that to her. Tanner Klein. Oh, I'm not leaving. I was saying goodbye to your wife. Oh, well, I'm glad you're staying. That's awesome. Thank you for joining us. I didn't see a question even from you yet there, so I thought, oh, that was fast, but cool. Glad you can stay. David Walsh, Merry Christmas. Working on endurance or range are building strength, respiratory muscles in throat and larynx muscles, or just getting control of the strength we have? This is a very interesting question. And thank you for asking that. Thank you very, very much for asking that. I look really goofy with this crown, don't I? Yeah, I look pretty goofy. Okay, well, we'll go a little bit further with the crown. I mean, it's all in the Christmas spirit. If you're working on endurance and you're working on range, so in some respects, these things all kind of intertwine and go hand in hand. But let's talk about endurance for a second. This is my opinion, but this is also written in Richard Miller's books, so please don't take my word for it. But there is nothing to suggest that forcing oneself to inhale deeply, nor is there anything to suggest that holding notes for really, really long times or trying to hold them for an extended period of time does anything to help with endurance overall or extending phrases. The things that will help you the most in terms of your endurance, and I mean endurance in terms of being able to sing a longer phrase, is efficiency of vowels relative to the range that you are in. So, if you have the most balanced mode of singing the vowel sounds, then you will maintain the closure or adduction of the vocal fold as consistently as can be done, and that's going to mean you're going to make the most efficient use of the air that you have, and that will then mean getting an overall longer phrase. Now, in different ranges of your voice, that's going to change. If you are up above the secondo passaggio and you're maintaining tone consistent with what you have in your chest voice range, or thyroarytenoid dominant range, we need to use more air in order to facilitate that, and that means that the phrases will be somewhat shorter. So oftentimes, working on making sure that we have balanced phonation of vowels will increase our endurance. This also has the effect of, even if you're talking about like physical endurance, like you get fatigued or tired, then having a more balanced approach to your vowels and your overall phonation is going to increase your endurance in that respect as well, because you're just using that much muscular energy. This has the effect of making increasing your range easier because you're working towards a balanced phonation. You're using your air column dynamically. So as you ascend, the subglottic air pressure, airflow slightly, is increasing. As you descend, subglottic pressure is decreasing ever so slightly. This is good, efficient use of the vocal fold, and that means you get the most efficient use of your voice throughout the various ranges and facilitates an ease of transition into the secondo passaggio because you're not carrying excess muscle tension around the larynx. In terms of respiratory muscles, I've kind of talked about the throat and larynx muscles in talking about efficiency. The respiratory muscles, we're talking about the diaphragm. The diaphragm is an involuntary muscle. We can't really force it to do anything. We have to use surrounding muscle groups in order to influence its behavior. Apagio breath management would have us laterally expanding the rib cage and engaging the inner and outer oblique muscles, the rectus abdominis muscles, and the intercostal muscles in order to maintain that suspension, is the way that we often talk about it. And what this does is it keeps the diaphragm in a largely passive but descended position, and that facilitates the dynamic use of your air column. A pretty good amount. Hopefully there's enough like English in there to be understandable. I know I used some muscular terms and some vocal related terms, but the thing is that all of this is in Richard Miller's books, or you can read it to a certain degree on Shirley Emmons' website. She makes a very, very concise, easily understandable statement around air column and support, and that's how I think about endurance and particularly volume as well. Range is something that we oftentimes have to learn to do. We have to learn the technique of making a smooth transition over the secondo passaggio. But long phrasing and volume and control of volume are natural consequences of a well-aligned, well-supported system. There's one other thing I was going to mention about that. Endurance. Oh, furthermore, the more that you maintain your lateral expansion and maintain your general engagement of your abdominal muscles, again, inner and outer obliques, rectus abdominis, intercostals, the more you maintain that position, the easier and faster the breaths will come. And so, one, you can take many more shorter top-up breaths without disturbing the phrase. And even if you do take a fuller breath, you can do so quickly, like remarkably quickly. And all of this has the effect of making the points where you take breaths and break phrases very, very hard to hear from an audience perspective. And oftentimes you'll find that vocalists who sound like they're making these ridiculously long phrases are actually just topping up their air column intermittently throughout, but they're doing it so quickly and so silently and efficiently that it's just not something that we really hear unless you listen really carefully for it. I hope that answers your question, David. Natasha Joubert, hello. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Tanner Klein, what are your opinions on the colloquial classification of a baritone? Say that 10 times quickly. You know, honestly, I don't really use that classification, and I suppose if that's the direction we're all going in, that's fine. I guess my fears around it are that if we start classifying, I think we're going to end up with an awful lot of baritenors if that starts to really make its way into common usage, because what you're going to find that the general location of the secondo passaggio for your bog standard average tenor is going to be somewhere along the F sharp above middle C. And your baritones are going to be somewhere in that D sharp area. But the thing is that if you haven't really spent the time to align your vowels carefully and really find out where modifications become necessary as you ascend through the zona de passaggio and where truly the most balanced point of registration event is, we're going to end up getting an awful lot of baritenors. Like, it's going to be very easy to classify people that way. So on the one hand, that's my only concern, but is that really a big deal? No, not really. I don't think that's a huge deal, except that my suspicion is that we might easily overlook some of the more beautiful characteristics of any given individual's voice. So, you know, if we just take a tenor or whatever, a singer, and they kind of sing low notes okay, and they struggle around E natural above middle C, but they can kind of get, you know, to a G, but it's in head voice. Or I shouldn't say but it's in head voice. You know, they get to the G in head voice, and it's not really connected. Oh, you're a baritoner, you know. But maybe with a little bit of practice, we would find that no, actually, that E natural was strained, and you should have been making a better. You make a better transition closer to D sharp, and singing G is fine. It's just that you've got to work through the transition, and then we can sort through their voice more carefully. Or on the other hand, you might find that they get to the G, they're kind of belting it, so it's still thyroarytenoid dominant, and after some practice and vowel alignment work, you find that the E was just where the modifications needed to really set in, and F sharp was really their registration event. And that person had been trying to sing like a baritone because they're a baritenor, so they must have the low notes as well as some of these high notes, but not all of them. And they've been struggling with all these lower pitches for all this time. And so that's my only real fear around it. But anybody who's studying with someone, I don't think should really concern themselves with it. I don't put a whole lot of emphasis on fuck determination. When it sort of reveals itself, I call it like I see it, and I have no fear around that. But I'm pretty careful about that. I always want to make sure that I am making the right designation. I want to make sure I find the right range for the person. Hello from Barbara. Hello, my name is Jeff. Welcome. Toma, here's my question. Does lowering the larynx help to activate high notes muscles, or is it just my thoughts? There could be some thoughts of yours relating into it. Keeping the larynx in a neutral to slightly lowered position facilitates airflow over the vocal fold. So the height of the larynx is more related to the flow of air over the vocal fold than it is pitch. It's not really related to pitch in so much as generating the pitch. Okay, so by keeping the larynx in a neutral to lowered position, we're facilitating more consistent and more voluminous airflow. Not volume as in loud or soft, but as in the volume of air coming over the vocal fold. And what this does is it gives us the opportunity for the vocal fold to remain adducted as we make that transition over the secondo passaggio. So we have to have the airflow in order to have the flexibility, the release of the vocal fold mechanism for the cricothyroid muscles to elongate the vocal fold. If we don't have the airflow, then usually what happens is the thyroarytenoid muscles, which are your chest voice muscles, will keep on trying to squeeze out those notes, and then we get so-called pulling chest. So keep the larynx in a neutral to lower position. We have consistent airflow. We get a little bit of vocal fold release. That means that the thyroarytenoid muscles can allow the cricothyroids to elongate the vocal fold, and we get the transition into the cricothyroid dominant singing voice, head voice. I hope that helps. Crown works for me. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. Like I said, I'll keep it on for a little while. They start to itch because it's just paper, and these are really fancy. These are fancy pants crackers, but it's kind of itching a little bit. But thank you. Hoovian, Merry Christmas, Jeff. I hope it will be a very nice year for you and for all of us. Bye. Thank you, Hoovian, and thank you to you. Of course, I wish you all the merriest and happiest of holidays. Tanner Klein, my voice feels like it can sing like a low tenor with a shimmering brightness in my mix. It has a dark intensity in my chest voice, and I can get fairly low with considerable power. Interesting. That basically describes a leggero tenor. If you're not familiar with that classification, check it out. You're not really asking for that, but just in terms of reading what you've written there and thinking about it, that's kind of what that sounds like to me. Maybe check it out and see if the registration event points are consistent with your experience. Divis, can you please talk a bit on the 3 overall principles: support, necessary twang, and avoiding protruding the jaw and tightening the lips? Well, that's interesting. I I have been talking about support. Of course, I'm very, very fond of the Apogeo breath management system, and that's what I teach in my practice, and that's I would encourage you to investigate it. Necessary twang, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you don't mean like a southern, kind of a Mississippi twang, like a Arkansas thing. And that what you're talking about is the singer's formant. And I could, of course, be wrong about that. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But in the singer's formant, that's a really interesting point that you bring up. I don't necessarily think about it as in that regard. I think about the singer's formant as being an aspect of our tonal palette. The neat thing, I think the coolest thing about the singer's formant, and I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again, is that when we're encouraging that type of resonance as a part of our tonal palette, as part of how we sing, we are activating resonances in an EQ band, a spectrum band, between about 2 kilohertz and 5 kilohertz, depending on the voice. So for a soprano, it'll be higher up. For a baritone, it's going to be lower down. And that formant, in fact, fits right into a dip where orchestras have a dip in their harmonic spectrum. So when you look at like a spectrum analysis, a spectrograph, or a frequency analyzer for an orchestral's overall sound, you'll see this dip, and that's right where your trusted opera singer will fit, which I think is really, really cool. It makes me sort of I don't want to go on too long about this, but it makes me think about like which came first, like this is like such a chicken and the egg kind of a thing, did vocalists naturally sing that way? And so orchestral instruments, as they were built over the centuries, the instrument makers took that into consideration, or vice versa, or did it just kind of all work together nicely? I don't know. I mean, it's something to think about. And protruding the jaw and tightening the lips. When you say that, I don't think specifically about that, but what I think about is flexibility of the outer flesh, and also flexibility of the TMJ joint. The idea is to be flexible and loose there, so that whatever we are meant to be singing next, we can allow our lips and jaw to adopt the most efficient position that we can. Paul, thanks for your training. You're welcome. You've helped me gain 5 half steps in my range over the last month. Tenors need range. That is true, and I'm very, very glad. That's awesome. Good job. Thank you for joining us. I don't recall seeing your user ID before. Welcome. Robret, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Jeff. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you as well, Robret. Thank you for joining us over the years. Years. I guess it's only been a little over a year that I've been doing these. Wait, no. I'm almost onto 100, so that's almost 2 years. Jeez, crazy. For those of you who are just joining us now, by the way, I'm wearing a crown because it's sort of a British cracker tradition. You pull apart these things, they make a popping noise, and then you get a little crown. My wife was here earlier, I gave her the deck of cards, which was the gift, and then you get like a little joke. And the joke was, what did the snowflake say to the fallen leaf? The answer is, you are so last season. So thank you. Karuka, hello, and hello to you too. Karina, I have something for you. There. That's the tea shop I was telling you about last week. Hopefully you're still there. Yeah, that's over it's on Marleybone Lane as well, and it's really nice. It's a really, really nice place. I tried to get a picture of Oxford Street. I was down in London earlier today teaching, and I tried to get a picture. I got pictures of Oxford Street, but for some reason, when I put them into I think they're probably too big. They're too big of a file. When I put them into the streaming software I'm using, it puts them sideways, and I didn't want you guys to have to try to look at the the thing sideways, so I didn't put that one up there. Thank you, Karina. I'm glad you like the hat. Singwise Vocals, welcome! Welcome, welcome, welcome. For those of you, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Singwise Vocals' work here on YouTube and also her incredibly comprehensive website is Karen. Thank you for joining us, Karen. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you. Patricia. Whoa. Okay, I have to leave now, but have a most wonderful, blessed Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you, Patricia. Have a Merry, Merry Christmas. JC's Radiant Ray is wishing Patricia a Merry Christmas as well, too. Microbiologia Cerveza Fiera Bra. So, is that like an organic firearm beer? Organic arm fire beer? Sounds awesome. With Mary Code, I'm mezzo and struggling after my second passaggio. How can we go for those notes? Way more lightly and easily. Merry Christmas for you. Merry Christmas to you too. So the thing about this, if what you mean is that you're struggling a bit above the secondo passaggio, that's one thing. If you're struggling with the secondo passaggio, it's kind of another. But since you're asking about airflow in general, wait a minute, I'm getting confused. I read ahead to JC's Radiant Ray's question about intercostal muscles, and I'm getting confused. Struggling with secondo passaggio, go for those notes more lightly and easily. So, to a certain degree, it depends a little bit on how much their how much of an onus there is on maintaining consistent tone across the secondo passaggio. If you really, really want to have a consistent sound to your voice, in other words, the average listener will think that you're singing with a ridiculously wide chest voice range, then there needs to be a rather significant increase in subglottic air pressure or support, if you will. And that's going to facilitate the vocal folds staying released and allowing all those resonances that you've been carrying up to that point to continue to resonate and carry on into your upper register. Now, but you say lightly and easily, and that's not necessarily light and easy the way I've described it. It doesn't feel heavy on the voice. It feels balanced and connected. It feels full sounding without feeling strained, pulled, or forced in any way. Now, if you can sacrifice a little bit, in other words, maybe if it's okay for it to sound a little more head voicey, a little more cricothyroid dominant, then you can lean your blend towards having a little bit more cricothyroid dominance and a little bit more head voice, maybe even do a little partial abduction of the vocal fold and let a little air seep over the vocal fold, and you'll get like the really nice breezy Aaron Neville-ish, if you know Aaron Neville, kind of a sound. But it depends on what you're trying to do. Hopefully that helps a little bit. JC's Rainy Ray, I have noticed a lot more involvement on my intercostal muscles lately when I'm singing my lower range. It's cool, but why? I suspect you're probably just maintaining your overall engagement that more consistently, and that is very cool indeed. That is very, very cool indeed. Yeah, I suspect that as what will happen, what I suspect will continue to happen is that you will notice that and notice that and notice that. And then something will change and your voice maybe won't be working quite the way you think it ought to. And then you'll sort of do like a little body reflection, be like, oh, I can feel that I'm not as engaged as I might normally be. You re-engage them and things will come back into alignment for you. And then sometime down the line, you won't notice them at all, and you'll just be singing, and then you'll get a cold, and try to phonate just to sort of kind of keep the rust off the pipes. You know, of course, I always recommend, and this is cold and flu season, so at least in the northern hemisphere, for those of you in South America or in Australia, New Zealand, it's the summer, or yeah, it's the summer. Train of thought. Right, you'll get a cold or flu, and then if you're gonna sing, if you have a cold or flu, and you can sing over the secondo passaggio effectively, then it's usually okay to sing, but take more breaks so that you can get some rest. If you can't phonate over the secondo passaggio, take time off, don't sing. But you'll go to sing with that cold, and all of a sudden you'll feel all those muscles again, and you'll realize how much you use them when you sing, how much a part of your posture they have become. I'm always surprised when that happens. It never fails to surprise me when I haven't had a cold for a while, and I go and I get a cold for whatever reason, and all of a sudden I notice all the musculature and how it works, and it's exhausting. It's really, really exhausting. Mike, right, artisanal beer. It's just a name. Very cool. Very cool. Yes, Karina. I believe they make their own Scotch eggs there. And for those of you who have just joined us, I'll show it again just because I think, I think it's really cool. And I love this place. You can see there it says 4 generations up there, and it's just such a lovely place. Really, really good stuff. And they make their own sandwiches, and sandwiches, Scotch eggs, you name it, Karina. That's right. And Merry Christmas to you. Oh, beautiful emoticons, Karina. Thank you. Joey, what if I have a voice teacher who only wants to teach classical music and I want to do just pop music mainly? Well, you have many choices, I should think, or maybe you don't. If you are in school and this is a mandatory class, whether that's, in primary school, secondary school, or university, college, whatever, and you have to take this course, then I guess you're just going to have to deal with it for the rest of the semester, and then perhaps decide if that's a course that you wish to continue pursuing. If this is the only teacher that is readily available to you, then what you might consider is that the technique between just private lessons. Okay, thank you for clarifying, Joey. You might ask them. You might start there and just ask them if you really think they're like an incredibly good teacher. Then, or maybe it's an incredible deal, or I don't know, what the circumstances are, but maybe it's worth studying them and then learning to apply the technical principles on your own. If there are other voice teachers in the area, and you have talked to the individual, but they don't want to work on contemporary music, then it's up to you to then decide to maybe move on from them. But I would start it all off with a conversation and just see if maybe even if maybe it would be worth it, even if they could just tailor their explanations towards the popular genres. Like, this is how we're going to shape this vowel here. In order to facilitate this in the popular genres, you're going to narrow it a little bit more, or allow the larynx to be in a more neutral position rather than lowered, if the case may be that. And then you can practice it on your own time. I don't know, Joey, it's, I think tonight's, it's getting on for Christmas, and people are with their families, as they should be, as I am, quite frankly. I'm just taking an hour out to have a chat with all of you. I suspect people are off doing things. Maybe just, type a little bit more down there. Tell me what's going on. We've got the time. You're very welcome, Karina. About the restaurant. I'd love to know about airflow too. I mean, better breath management techniques. Honestly, Karina, the Apogeo breath management system changed everything about how I was singing. Inconsistencies that I could not figure out for years immediately started to get better and ultimately were resolved in the grand scheme of things in a very short amount of time. In truth, it probably took me about 1.5 to 2 years before I really transitioned into an effective use of the Apogeo breath management system. If you listen, shameless plug, right? If you listen to the music on the Atlantean, while I was making that record was the period where I had been I had discovered Apogeo on my own. I had begun the process of trying to understand it and was not doing very well. I then got with a teacher in the Bay Area, Megan Dibble, and then that really began the process of changing my body orientation in order to make effective use of Apogeo. And when I made the Atlantean, I was like about 9 months, half a year, 9 months into that process. And what you hear when you listen to the vocals on that, what you're hearing is me trying to over control the Apogeo system. So I had made this transition to lateral expansion and abdominal engagement, but I wasn't really balancing the expansion and engagement properly. And so there's a certain stridency to the sound of my voice in some of those songs. I'm thinking of like Hold the Line and Sea Sponge to a certain extent, where there's a certain stridency which I think is out of an excess of overall tension in my body because I was just trying to grab onto the sound any way I could. And it was then later on that I started to balance out and be much more dynamic with my overall body engagement. So I mean, but that's really like, that's where I would have you I would direct you to have you look at that. Tracy's rating rate. Wow, thank you. You're very welcome. It was like I had a soundboard or backboard to control sound easily from my lowest to highest notes. I hope it never stops. May it be thus. May it be thus. May it be thus. Karuka. Is it okay for your chest to slightly move when breathing from the diaphragm? Depends on how slightly. Really depends on how slightly. And I mean, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. In general, in your regular breathing pattern, it's going to basically stay put. It's not going to move around very much. It's not going to do any kinds of, pumping or flapping or anything like that. If you've if you've come on like a really, really, truly long phrase that can't be broken, there might be some amount of collapse there. And we can do very little about that. And we might make that exception just once there. But in general, very, very little motion. Very, very little motion in the upper chest area. You will see some motion around the solar plexus. Let me see. I don't know if you can see where I'm putting my hand. Nope. Around the solar plexus. So, right here. So this is my sternum, my rib cage. Right here is the xiphoid. This is the lower tip of the sternum. And here are the solar plexus muscles. And you may notice, those kind of bumping a little bit with articulations because that little additional engagement there can act as an articulator for the notes. But not so much up here. Divis! Wait a minute, no. I'm curious about something. Okay, and Joey Midget, Midyet. just private lessons, which we're still talking about. Microbiologia Cerveza Fiera Bras, which cool user ID, by the way. I'm curious about something. Why is it so hard to go over the secondo passaggio when the tessitura of a certain aria score sits in this area, and not so hard when going up there from the middle voice? That's a very cool question. Sitting in the area of the zona di passaggio, or especially on the secondo passaggio, is where our technique needs to be the most specific. Any inconsistencies in our technique will be revealed. So if your vowel alignment isn't as optimal as it could be, if your engagement and subglottic air pressure, apagio breath management, isn't being managed as well as it could be, then that will occur there. That's a lot of what was happening on the Atlantean for me, was not really managing the muscular engagement of the torso of my body effectively. And so if you're just sitting on the secondo passaggio, you're basically inviting all of these things to be revealed, which is great because you can find out about them. Yeah, that is where our technique needs to be most specific. Any inconsistencies get revealed, but then when you're just transitioning over it, sits in the area and not so hard when going up there from the middle voice. Yeah. So the middle voice, if you're like just below the secondo passaggio, let's say you're like hovering around the primo passaggio, give or take. You know, maybe you're just above the primo passaggio or just at it, whatever, and then you're kind of going up to the secondo passaggio. What you are hopefully doing is you've got a little bit of elongation of the vocal fold occurring, so there's an additional amount of cricothyroid dominance that's happening. And so you've got the vocal fold oriented to very easily make that transition. I've been thinking about this a lot. I've had 2 lessons back to back where this has come up, and I think it's worth mentioning here, which is that, and it's a bit of a conundrum, it's a bit of a paradox. We spend a lot of time defining where the secondo passaggio is, and of course, like, that's a key component of determining Fach. However, we talk about this specific point, but then when we want to make the transition over it, we have to think about it as a spectrum, you know, of maybe it's, you know, like black on one side and white on the other, and the zona di passaggio is this shades of gray. That we don't ultimately want to have the secondo passaggio be treated as a single point. We want it to be part of a spectrum of transition. And I've been, I think that bears some thinking about. It certainly bears some thinking about for me in how I discuss these things and how I teach them. Because part of what I'm trying to do is not only enable people that use the channel and that work with me and all that kind of stuff, singers all over the place, it's not only to give you the tools to achieve these things, but to do it as quickly as we can, so that you can start to use your voice sustainably and effectively as soon as possible. I hope that answers your question. I might shorten your user ID to Firebeer. Yeah, I hope that's okay. I honestly, I don't know if Fiera means fire in Spanish, and I apologize if I'm totally getting that wrong, but I kind of like the idea of Firebeer. I think that sounds really cool. But I digress. Divis, what is your advice for us this Christmas week? Have fun, if you can. Have fun, relax, enjoy, sing a little bit. Maybe go caroling if that's your thing. Take good care of yourself. Rest, perhaps. I'm going to try and rest a lot. I'm going to drink probably a lot of tea, because I stopped drinking a couple years ago. So it's tea, maybe a few extra cups of coffee here and there. That's about it. I would say the things that bring you joy, I would hope that you can have this Christmas. If that means going for a walk, or getting some beers with friends, or making a dinner, or whatever that is for you, I hope that you can have some fun and some joy this Christmas. Janet 2A. Jeff, are you still in London? I'm in the UK, not far from London, and fairly new to your channel. Hello, Karen, if you're still here. Yeah, I don't recall seeing your user ID before. Janet 2A, welcome. I'm in the UK right now, and I will be until next week. If you think you might be in or near London and would like to try to meet up, then the way to facilitate that is to send an email via jeffrolka.com. There's a contact form on that website, or you can use Voice Lessons SF. I should write these down. jeffrolka.com or voicelessonssf.com. Either one of those will put you in direct contact with me, and if it works out, great. And if not, maybe next time. Trash bin. I know this might be a dumb question. No such thing. Thank you for asking your question. But is there a way to expand your vocal range without straining your voice? If so, could you share it with me? That's what this whole channel is basically about. That's basically everything that's going on here, is to give you the choice of how you're going to use your voice in your upper register. The way to do it without straining is to make a smooth transition over the secondo passaggio between your thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, which is your chest voice, and your cricothyroid dominant singing voice. That is your head voice. And the head voice, in my opinion, is much maligned. Unfortunately, over the years, we have come to think of head voice as falsetto and falsetto as head voice, and they are not the same thing. The vocal fold is not oriented in the same way in those two different usages of the voice. And there's lots and lots and lots about this on the channel. I would direct you, trash bin, I'm not sure if you're male or female, but there's lots and lots of high note, how to sing high notes, and there's technical videos as well as practice videos. If you happen to be male, how to sing high notes part 1 is a very good place to start. Lililowski. Hi Jeff, Mary Mary. Mary Mary to you. Love your videos, thank you. I find I think too much when singing and lose too much air in consonants. Over control, that's it. Yeah, you know, consider softening the consonants a little bit. Or one of my favorite exercises is to eliminate them entirely. So, like, work on a song without any of the consonants, and see that all of your vowel sounds align properly. And what I mean by align is that the tone of your voice remains consistent no matter which vowel you happen to be singing. And see how you do. If you're not in good alignment, then you may want to consider just checking out some exercises to work on your vowel alignment. That will help a lot with air as well. And I would say this too. I don't know if you were here at the very beginning, but I talked a lot about endurance. Another person, David Walsh, had a question about endurance and range, and I went on quite at length on that. And you might want to double back. YouTube will publish this as a video once we're done, which is not long from now, and you might want to check that out. Mandy comments, hey, I wanted to attend, but I'm stuck running last-minute Christmas errands. All the best to you and yours and to everyone here for the season. Health and happiness and kindness and lots of music. That's a lovely, lovely thing to say, Mandy. Thank you, and Merry Christmas. Happy Christmas to you as well. I hope your errands go well. I was in Selfridges this afternoon, and it was crazy in there, but fun. Dylan Klein music at Joey. That's a very interesting point. Jason Rayet, Mandy comments, oh gosh, microbiologia cerveza, what a wonderful question. Whoa! I skipped one. Yan. Oh no, I missed 40 minutes already. Merry Christmas, Jeff. Merry Christmas, everyone. Yeah, and you can always circle back around. YouTube will publish this as a video once we close the connection and all that. Jason Rating Ray at Yan. Thank you, Karina. I'm glad that was helpful. Merry Christmas. Bye, Natasha. Have a wonderful Christmas and New Year, Natasha. Karina Chen, Richard Miller is a supporter teacher about Apogeo 2. Yes. Yes, he is. Technically, we should probably say was, because he died. I don't know exactly when he died. He died a little while ago. But yes, Richard Miller, classical singing instructor, big advocate of Apogeo breath management. A very scientific, in my opinion, a very scientific, a lot of anatomy in those books, approach to teaching singing and working with the voice. Actually, I've got a lot of his books on my this page. I'm now an Amazon influencer, but whatever. It's a fun way for me to share like books and equipment and other things. Like I put my socks on there because there's this one kind of socks that I really like, and I thought you might like them too, or people in general might like them too. Anyways, there's a bunch of his books on there. A lot of them will say that they're no longer available. Click on them anyway. Because oftentimes you can get used copies, and at least like I have one of his is digital. I have one that's digital, one that's used, and two that I bought new. But one of the two that I bought new has subsequently gone out of print, and that's really that's the biggie. That's the Training Tenor Voices, and that's really quite a good book to have. It's really good. It's really good. Training Soprano Voices is also very good. The Structure and Art of Singing is very good too. It has more of a feel of being an overview in how it's structured. In all of these books, like I've probably read through all of Training Tenor Voices, but I've always kind of used them as reference books. So I kind of read a bit and go back, or something will come up in a lesson or in my own practice, and I'll go back and try to understand more about what's occurring in order to better understand it. Singwise Vocals is still here. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you too. Karina Chen, nice to see you here. Hello, Karina. Jason Rainer Ray, My Gaming. Hey, My. Welcome. Martin Franken, thanks for everything you do, Jeff. I only recently discovered your videos, but I already made quite improvements. Wonderful. Thanks to your videos. Thanks a whole bunch, mate. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. No, Karina, no eggnog from me. No eggnog. Just tea and coffee. Just tea and coffee. When should we, Dylan Klein Music, when should we tenors start thinking about transitioning to the next area of the voice, around B flat 4, or is there a tertiary zona de passaggio we need to consider as a region? Of course, there's a variety of different tenors, and their next registration event will slide slightly depending on their overall thok, but for, like the lyric tenor, this is around C5, and then, C5, B4, like B natural 4, B flat 4 are the general areas of the transition into falsetto. That transition, whenever we talk about feelings, it's fair to say that it is subjective. So you might feel the way I feel, but you might not. When I'm making that transition over the next registration event, there's a certain amount of engagement or muscle, it feels like a muscle dullness to me. And what this is the vocal fold abducting slightly and then dampening in order to facilitate that next registration event and those higher notes that remain consistent with everything that came from below. So even though this is called the falsetto register of our voices, the tone is consistent with what comes before, with practice. All of this, I could put with practice at the end of everything I say. And maybe I ought to do a little bit more of that, because it's not a trick. we don't necessarily, I mean, there's an exception to everything, so I imagine that there's someone out there that you could show this to them once and then they would forever be able to sing that way. But most of the time, we need to build consistency by practice. So with practice, that registration event will become as balanced as we can be in the registration event over the secondo passaggio. For me, this manifests as a certain dullness, but I also notice a rather large increase in subglottic air pressure. I would say much more different than the transition over the secondo passaggio. So as you're transitioning through the zona di passaggio and over the secondo passaggio, there is a point in there that it becomes quite necessary to really increase the engagement in order to maintain good subglottic air pressure, or airflow if you will, so that the vocal fold can remain released in order to facilitate consistency of sound. The next registration event, which Dylan Klein Music is asking about here, that increase in engagement to me feels quite a bit more than the one at the secondo passaggio, but again, feelings are subjective, and for you, that may not be the case. This is why I often use the super lip trill, though, in order to work on that registration event. Because I think that when we've gone so far and we've made that good transition over the secondo passaggio, we're more or less primed to start making the next transition. And one of the key facilitators of that is that increase in subglottic pressure. That, to me, facilitates it quite nicely. That, and I like to use the pentatonic scales for that. I think the pentatonic scale has a nice combination of skips and scale-wise and step-wise and skip-wise motion in it. That really seems to work well. I have a couple friends who are countertenors, and they've been looking for full warm-ups and get to know more about their voice type. Is there any specific set of videos or texts you may recommend? Certainly. Well, that's interesting. I mean, I certainly do a lot of extended range warm-ups, which they could check into. That would at least be good practice if they just want to vocalize and kind of do their warm-ups up there. It depends on what you mean by, countertenors. Depends on what you mean by countertenor. That word can mean one of two things. It can mean a very, very high-range tenor, which I would usually refer to as like a lyric tenor. Richard Miller doesn't really treat countertenors as an actual FOC. He considers countertenors to basically be baritones who have a very, very highly developed upper register and falsetto range. And so it depends a little bit on what their voices are. But, Richard Miller's books, I recommend Richard Miller's books all the time. I think they're incredibly comprehensive while still pretty easy to read. They're very, very well annotated. His source materials, if they're not his own, in other words, if he didn't put a scope down somebody's throat or have it done in a lab, then he's got really, really good source material that he's quoting and collating as well. So, unfortunately, for those cats, you're talking about training tenor voices, and that's the most expensive of his books. But it's an investment. And if you watch Amazon, the thing about it is that if you watch them on Amazon, they vacillate in price. So a couple weeks ago I checked, and there was nothing less than $300 US. And it's a small book. It's a tiny little book, right? But then I checked last week, and there was one for $50. And I almost bought it just to have a spare copy in case something happens to my copy. So yeah, that's the scoop on that. There's my Amazon shop. Joey, pop songs I try to sing with the classical technique that I learned in class sometimes just don't work. Would you say contemporary technique is completely different? No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, my work here is an adaptation of classical technique. That's why I'm saying, just maybe ask him if they will kind of help you, sort of sort of work it out. I just think it's too bad if they can't work with you, but some people, just won't or can't for some reason. Now, the thing is that some of the popular pop music techniques, which will go unnamed from me, mostly because they have like really stringent copyright rules around it. They are. I find some of those techniques to be very, very useful for vocalists who are very new to vocal technique. But I find that moving on from them as soon as possible leads to more rapid development of a given individual's voice. So in the initial stages of vocal training, especially if it's your first form of musical training, oftentimes just our overall listening acuity needs to be increased before we're really going to be able to sing melismatic scales with any acceptable degree of accuracy. And those pop techniques are really, really good at that. But they're very, very heavy on repetition. They're very, very heavy on just doing exercises without explanation. And while I don't necessarily try to talk too much in my lessons and over-explain things, I find that some amount of understanding of how the mechanisms work facilitates repeated doings of it so that we develop more consistency sooner in the process with an understanding of how things are working. And that all feeds into more rapid growth on the part of the student. And that's supposed to be what that's kind of what I think I'm supposed to be doing, is to helping people sing, better, more quickly. That's kind of how I think about what I'm supposed to do. So to me, a bit of explanation, without droning on about it too much, is appropriate. Maybe that's why I like these events so much, because I just get to talk about technique like for an entire hour without stopping. I just get to go and go and go. My at JC's Radiant Ray. My Gaming's got a big smile. Janet 2A, excellent. Karen, Divis. Oh, you can email? Wonderful. Yeah, I love the place over on... It's actually not on the High Street. It's on 29 Marylebone Lane. Oh, you know it well. Divis, when I sing alone, where no one is around, I sing well. In our group, I sometimes sound bad. What can I do to get rid of that? That could mean any... I don't know. It depends on what's happening, right? If you're singing alone and you're not singing with a track, you might be singing all over the place, and you might not realize it. Your timing could be off, your pitch could be off, you could be changing keys, you could be ignoring range. Hard to say what could be happening. Anything could be happening. When you sing in a group, all of a sudden, we're held accountable to rhythm, pitch, intonation, listening to fellow singers, and singing the line that we're supposed to be singing. Any one of those things can throw you off and make you sound not as good in the context of the group. So there's a lot of different things in there. Yeah, Karen, Sing Wise Vocals, Training Tenor Voices by Richard Miller's out of print and very expensive to find. I was just talking about that, which you may have seen there. When I bought that book, I just sort of pinched my nose and I think I paid like $80 for it, and it was just like, I didn't really want to buy a paperback book it's only like 200 and some odd pages. It's not big. But I did, and I'm really, really glad I did. But like I was saying, keep an eye on Amazon, because every once in a while, one will pop up, and it'll be $50, and it's worth grabbing. Jay, do you recommend classical training in order to master breath support? You could, if it's the only game in town, and that's what you've got, and you want to do that. I think that's great. But I don't think you have to train as a classical vocalist in order to have quality breath support. I think the thing to look for is someone who will work with you with the Apogeo breath management system. That is my opinion. And it's probably because Apogeo changed so much for me. But I feel it's incredibly effective, and I would highly recommend you check it out. Karina Chen says, good question, Jay. I am going to wrap it up. Been a while. You haven't had internet for over 2 months. I've been very good, Mai. It's good to see you back. 2 weeks. That's a lot of videos to catch up with. Well, best of luck. I'm sure it'll be great. Sin Color. Yeah, I saw your video the other day. Good stuff. You're in a car. That was cool. Felt like I was losing power in the voice. Thanks for your videos. I'm once again growing vocally. Wonderful. Hopefully you can check my channel. I've already checked out your channel. And yeah, and I enjoyed that. You guys did really, really good. That was really, really cool. Oh, thank you. Yes, the links. That's right. I'm an Amazon affiliate now, so if you're shopping at Amazon, if you click through the influencer page where there's a link, or if you click through the link that's on the homepage of jeffrolka.com, it's just a little click. Your shopping experience will be the same, but a small portion of whatever you purchase gets donated back to me, and everything really, really helps the channel and keep things rolling, and I really, really appreciate it. But like I said, your shopping experience will be exactly the same as if you didn't click that link. Nothing will change. It's just an affiliate link is all. So everyone, Singing McSingermans, could you describe the way Josh Groban gets his amazing sound? In a word, balance. Balance. Balance of phonation. You're welcome, Dylan Klein Music. Merry Christmas, everyone. I mentioned this earlier. Yeah, thank you, Karen. Definitely, yeah. I think that's, when they come up used, it's as long as you don't mind a used book. I personally don't mind a used book. And I assume that the Richard Miller ones that I saw that were less expensive were used. It doesn't bother me. So long as it's usable. I mean, if it's all ripped to shreds, that's one thing. But anyways, everyone, I want to wish you the happiest of holidays and a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and all those lovely things. I'm on next week, so I'll be around next week if you want to come in and ask some questions or chit chat a little bit. Thank you. I forgot I was wearing my crown. This was taken out of my cracker. We did a cracker at the beginning of the lesson of our chat today. And as I was mentioning to Divis when asked about what you should do over the Christmas holidays, have fun, enjoy yourselves, sing if you like. Whatever brings you joy, I hope you can have. And I just want to wish you the happiest of Merry Christmases. Thank you all so much for being a part of the channel. Thank you for being a part of our live event. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for watching the videos. Thank you for sharing with your friends. For those of you who've made monetary contributions, thank you so much for that. I truly appreciate it. Yeah, it's great. And I am very excited about 2018. I think there's going to be lots of cool stuff. And we will get into that more as we go on. So until next week, which I will be here for, take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing. Have a Merry Christmas. And I'll see you next week. Bye. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing. Have a Merry Christmas. And I'll see you next week. Bye.